Well, it's Saturday morning today, and I'm probably going fishing. But before I go fishing today, I would just like to think on a few thoughts from years gone by. And I don't know how long this will last or how good it will even turn out. But I'm just going to go through a few things before I go fishing. Fishing, I'm sorry. But anyway, years and years ago, God, the God of heaven, called a man to leave his country and go. And the man's name was Abram. And he left the country and followed the voice. And he followed the voice and he followed the voice. Now, one time he listened to the voice of his wife, and she offered him a maid servant of hers. And a child was born. And the child's mother was real happy about the child, but Abram's wife wasn't as pleased as she could have been. And anyway, the the mother and the son were out in the wilderness, and the mother and them were out there, and the baby was crying. And God heard the lad crying, and guess what? Guess what God did? He heard a baby crying and sent an angel. Now that's really good. I mean, here is the woman with her baby. She's in the wilderness, out there somewhere, and she's in trouble, and the baby is crying. And God and heard the lad crying, and the angel of God called to Hagar from heaven and said to her, "What is the matter with you? Do not fear, for God has heard the voice of the lad where he is." Oh my goodness. This lad is not very old. And God is hearing this lad in heaven. And the angel spoke to her. And then God opened her eyes, and she saw a well of water, and she went and filled the skin with water and gave the lad a drink. And God was with the lad, and he grew and lived in the wilderness and became an archer. And he lived in the wilderness of Paran, and his mother took a wife for him from the land of Egypt. And now it came about at that time that Abimelech and somebody else in the army spoke to Abraham, saying, "God is with you in all that you do. Now therefore swear to me here by God that you will not deal falsely with me or with my offspring or with my posterity, but according to the kindness that I have shown to you, you shall show to me, and to the land in which you have sojourned." So Abraham said, "I swear it." But Abraham complained to Abimelech because of the well of water which the servants of Abimelech had seized. And things go on and on from there. But anyway, later it says God tested Abraham and said to Abraham, "Take now your son, the only son whom you love, named Isaac, to the land of Moriah, and offer him there as a burnt offering on one of the mountains of which I will tell you." So Abraham rose early in the morning and saddled his donkey and took two of his young men with him and Isaac his son, and he split some wood for the burnt offering and rose and went to the place of which God had told him. On the third day, Abraham raised his eyes and saw the place from a distance. And Abraham said to the young men, "Stay here with the donkey. I and the lad will go yonder, and we will worship and return to you." And Abraham took the wood of the burnt offering and laid it on Isaac his son. And he took in his hand the fire and the knife. So the two of them walked on together. Now, isn't that something? The boy's not very old. They got the knife, they got the wood, they got the fire, and they're going to the mountain. And they all came back, and things happened after that because we know we got Abraham, and we know we got Isaac, and then comes Jacob, and then later on we find that I'm not looking this up, so I could have it wrong. But later on, there was lots of people because of a covenant that God gave with Abraham, because God had made a covenant with them, and it was called the covenant of circumcision. But anyway, it got to a point to where there was time for a king, because God had already told them that there were going to be kings. And it just, worked around. It got time for the king. And I'm going to, just off the top of my head, I'm going to say maybe Samuel went and anointed a king named Saul. If it wasn't Samuel, it was another prophet. So just, don't get upset with me because I didn't look it up. But anyway, he went and Saul was king over the people, for quite a few years. And then Saul got to doing some things that God wasn't pleased with. I'm talking about the God of heaven. Not that's the one in heaven that sent the angel, to the boy I talked about a while ago. This is the God of heaven. He is all powerful, almighty, and he can do on the earth and in the earth what he wants to do. And he picked a king for him, and the king, he might have looked good, and he might not have looked good. I don't know. I didn't see him. But anyway, he was king for a while. But then he got to messing up. And God got displeased with him. And I'm going to just, for the sake of saying it, I'm going to say it was Samuel again. Or it might have been Jonathan. No, Jonathan was another child. But anyway, the prophet was sent to find somebody to replace Saul. And he got to the man's house that he was going to look for. And the man brought in all his children. And the prophet said, "Have you got any more?" And he said, "Well, there's one more. He's off out there in the mountains, out in the pastures. He's taking care of my animals." "Well, you need to bring him. Let me see him." Well, he sent for him, and he got him there. And sure enough, that was the child. Now, how did this prophet know that? Well, this prophet just happened to be able to hear God talk to him. I mean, that's how he knew. And he had some oil, and he took the oil and he anointed this child to be king. And it was a done deal. I mean, as soon as the prophet got there and got the child that God, wanted, and he anointed him with oil, then the king was set. And his name was David, if I'm not mistaken. Now, I've been known to make mistakes. You can know that. And I've already gone 10 minutes on this, so I better hurry. So anyway, David and Saul, they had a few encounters together, but David wouldn't kill him, and Saul didn't know what to do. You know, David had killed his tens of thousands, and Saul had killed thousands. And anyway, I think Saul wound up falling on his sword and dying one day. But David became king. Well, sometime later, David was told by the God of heaven. David got to talking to the same God that the prophet talked to. And the God of heaven told David that he was going to have one on his throne forever. Yep, made him promise right there that day, did. And there were some more kings, you know, after David, I guess. But there was still the promise of one that would, you know, be a king. And they might have anointed all the other kings, you know, some prophet came and anointed them and everything. But the king that I'm really interested in right now was there was a child born to be a king, and his daddy, his father, was the God Almighty that had sent the prophet with the, you know, little whatever whatever flask of oil to anoint the king. Well, that anointing worked real good for, you know, David and those kings. But this next king, the one that's going to be king, you know, forever, that God has picked out to be king forever, he wasn't anointed out of a bottle of oil by a prophet. No, he just went out into the wilderness where a prophet just happened to have been preaching. And then he got baptized by the Spirit of the living God. And boy, did things start to happen after that. And some things have been happening ever since they crucified this child that was born to be the king. He was the Son of God that I like to talk about. A lot of the, you know, on Facebook, and maybe a lot of people in lots of other places, not real interested in this subject like I am. But I am really interested in this subject. And I'm trying to look interested in it. And I'm going to keep this under 15 minutes, so I got to hurry. But this king that they crucified is going to come back. Now, I don't know how many are going to have been killed, you know, before he comes back or is sent back. He's got to be sent back. He was taken up to be with his Father, and his Father is the one that sets things up. He sets them up the way he wants to, and he brings them about when he wants to. And today, we can call it the day of salvation. And today, if you hear his voice, there's certain things that people can do. That does not mean that they will do it. But it means that they could do it if they hear his voice. It is not a time to harden hearts. And the only thing that I can see that really hardens hearts is the deceitfulness of sin. So I say, lay it aside today. Find out what your Father and Jesus' Father in heaven wants you to do, and then do it. Thank you.